Poor spider, I will burn your home in order to escape. And when the darkness grows into my heavily loaded back, I'll shake it off my shoulders and I'll follow my own track.
Welcome to the premiere episode of our podcast. We are the Vagabonds. We're here sipping our toxic masculinity whiskey, which is our favorite drink, not just for the taste, but for the name. This episode is going to be a little different than what we're going to do in the future. We're going to be way more political this time because an election's coming up. From now on, we're going to have interesting guests, and we're going to talk more about military and intelligence stuff, maybe something about the entertainment industry. But we really wanted to get something out before the election showing our commitment to what's going on in this country. So here we go. First thing we're going to talk about is the issues. We'll talk about all the issues that are really tearing this country apart. And then we'll get into talking about some of the candidates, mainly here in our home state of Arizona, but we got a couple other states we want to get our 2 cents in on also. So the first topic that we're going to cover is crime. Crime is a big thing in this country, and something has got to be done about crime. Now here in Tucson, we don't get the worst of it, but some of these big cities, it's absolutely ridiculous.
But it's coming across here too. This is the main corridor for fentanyl coming into this country. Comes right through Tucson and zips up the highway and, makes it to its end point in that. And on top of, with the smuggling operation comes human trafficking and all the inherent crime of people that are thrown out on this side of the border, although they've got their little chits and everything, that when that runs out, they're going to resort to stealing. So you have a lot more break-ins, you have a lot more cars being stolen. It affects us directly here, and I'm sure it affects a lot of people out there. Maybe not so much in the small towns, but it's coming your way.
It's only inevitable that once the big cities have lost total control, and they're right on a cusp of that right now, it's going to drift out into the suburbs and then into the rural areas, and pretty soon all of the country is just going to be too dangerous to move freely around in, and that's no way to live. So when you're going to the polls this time in November, keep crime in mind and vote for the side that you think is going to do the best job of getting crime under control, which I guarantee is not the Democrats.
Try to be on the side that can make a coherent sentence at one time.
Yeah. And that brings us right into the border, because he already brought the border up a little bit, and we're going to talk some more about the border. 3 million people already since Biden's been president. I mean, really, 3 million people. And it's not like the old days. When I was young, there was a little bit of illegal immigration, mostly coming from Mexico. It wasn't that big of a deal. There was also something called the Bracero program, which allowed a lot of Mexican workers to come up here seasonally and work on the harvest, work in the meatpacking industry, work in the agricultural industry. But now we're getting terrorists from Afghanistan. We're getting refugees from southern Russia. We're getting Africans and Haitians and Venezuelans and Guatemalans and Nigerians, and we don't even know what's coming across the border.
You need to ask yourself a simple question. What do these people add to our culture or our economy or to our standard of living? Are there jobs here for them? There's, we're going through a recession, in case you haven't heard it from anybody. And jobs are hard to find out there, even though we've gone through a transition on our manufacturing. There's a lot more things like, especially here in Arizona, a free state, where they're building large chip factories instead of depending on China for the chips that we need. And there's a lot more of that needs to be going on. But that doesn't mean that those people coming across the border have got those skills that they can work in those industries. First of all, they're here illegally. But even if they had the skills, they're competing directly with an American that has the same skills. You need to ask yourself the question, are we willing to bear this plague of people that we have to deal with now? Can we afford it? And make your choices, because you're going to have to do something, not just stop it. You need to quell it.
Yeah, and
Did I say that?
did any of us really vote for this? I mean, even if you voted Democrat, poor deluded creature, you didn't vote to let 3 million people from all over the world, most of them with no skills whatsoever, come flooding across the southern border at will. And now that you didn't vote for it, you've got to vote against it. We've got to get that border under control, and I'm not against immigration at all. We need to bring people in, but we need to bring people with skills in. We need to bring in people that understand high tech. We need to bring in engineers, and we need to bring in mathematicians, and we need to bring in people that have a real positive contribution to make. We don't need 3 million unskilled laborers.
And strippers. We should
Strippers, yes, we should definitely bring in strippers.
Bring in strippers.
Yes, yes. Nothing that we're saying applies to really hot young women. That's a whole category of its own that we're not even going to get into.
Good thing we're here, because we won't get thrown out of the last place.
Yeah.
This particular subject came up.
All right. I think we've exhausted the border. Let's go on to inflation. Have you been to the grocery store lately? I mean, seriously. I know my monthly grocery expenditures are up $200 a month at least, and with no change in eating habits whatsoever. Just the things that I bought when Trump was president now cost me an extra $200 to get the exact same amount of groceries every month. It's ridiculous. And gas, well, we all know about gas. The Biden administration thinks it's a big deal to raise gas prices $3, drop them $1, and tell them how lucky we are that it's gone down.
I was just starting to feel good.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, come on. Right here in Tucson, we were paying $1.79 back in the waning days of the Trump administration. Now it went up to $5, and now it's at about $3.25 to $3.40. Okay, and the Biden administration thinks that's a win. It's not a win. It's just outrageous.
Wait, can you hear that? That's 5 more people leaving California.
I thought you were going to say that the price is going up again.
I can make the sound effects for that.
Yeah. But we need to get inflation under control, and now we're in a recession with inflation. The last time I remember that was during the Carter administration, when, thank God, I was in the military, so it didn't hit me very hard. Although I do remember a couple months where I didn't get paid.
They could take a big chunk out of it right away by just cutting off all foreign aid. Turn it around, put it back into our treasury to heal the wounds of what Congress has been stealing out of Social Security for the last 50 years, and the new spending spree by that crowd in Washington. So it's there's a lot of things. There's a lot of people out there that have much better minds than mine that have spoke about.
There's a lot of people sitting right here that have much better minds than you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, Elvis has left the building. Like people like Victor David Hanson, Jordan Peterson, that are looking at the macro problems that we have, and just how big a task it's going to be for anybody coming in to repair what's wrong with both the economy and the political system. We're just a couple of old guys out here. We've got our own views. Some of you remember us from when you talked to your grandfather when he didn't want to be bothered. Yeah. So we hope that we'll be able to add some enlightenment and some entertainment to your life.
All these views are just ours. They're our opinions. You can't fact check us, because opinions aren't facts. We think our opinions are based on facts, but they're still our opinions. So we're going to move on now. We've pretty much done the domestic end of things, crime, the border, and inflation, 3 horrible things the Biden administration has screwed up beyond belief.
And we truly hope we can find guests that'll come on that can talk about these topics. You know, people that are in the know, they're prominent in that particular field and that.
Well, he's already named 2 of them, Jordan and Victor. You're both welcome here.
Don't do that. He's willing to pay 10 grand just to have lunch with you 2 guys. You know that, right? Okay. I think we can get 15 out of them.
All right, let's go on to foreign affairs. Right now, we have some serious issues with China.
China.
The Democrats, for some reason, have this obsession with Russia.
Race eaters.
We've spent a lot of time in Russia, and we actually like Russians, and we don't have any real issues with Russians. I don't think Vladimir Putin is the best leader in the world, but neither is Joe Biden, let's face it. So, you know, that's kind of 6 and 1/2 a dozen of the other.
We spent an interesting vacation in Russia, all the way out to Siberia, down to Kazakhstan and that. Of course, that was right after communism collapsed.
Yeah.
And the only people in the country were lawyers from New York trying to show them how to build a capitalistic free market country, and con men. We were not the con men.
Yeah.
We were victims of
We weren't the lawyers either.
Yeah.
Come on, if you're going to deny things, deny the important things first.
We actually had the lawyers turn us into the U.S. Embassy.
Yes, we did. It's because we took their watches for food. You can read about all this if you haven't already read our book, Vagabonds, Tourists in the Heart of Darkness. Shame on you. But you can read about it. It's available from Amazon and many other booksellers in hardback, Kindle, and audio.
And Don, if you're out there, we're doing a special edition in red crayon.
But China is, without a doubt, the most dangerous adversary that we have on this planet. There's nobody else even close. They are working very hard to establish themselves as an economic
Silk Road.
empire without the hassles of the political empire like the British did it, but just controlling the economies of countries from Brazil to Nigeria to Bangladesh to the Philippines. China is got their little tentacles everywhere. They got a Navy base in southern Baluchistan that they can use to control the exit from the Persian Gulf. There goes much of the world's oil. China is not friendly, and unfortunately, they pay a lot of our politicians and a lot of our corporations to be on their side. The Germans did the exact same thing in France in the 1930s. If you've ever studied what Germany did in terms to soften up the French before World War II, China is using the same book. And for those of us who understand a little bit of history, which leaves out everybody under the age of 40 in this country, you can see the parallels quite plainly, and you can see the effects of the money that they've spread around in certain parts of our society, and it is a frightening thing to watch.
Well, the textbook is basically, how the problem we have today is totalitarianism. I don't care if it's religious based or political based, but people that want to control every aspect of the people underneath them from cradle to grave. And what all great empires fall when they go apathetic. When the standard of living is so good that you don't pay attention to the politics, and you have politicians that won't believe that their next door neighbor is evil. and you have conquest that happens right after that. And it's a slow and insidious process, but they've been at it for 70 years. We didn't just wake up and China was our committed enemy. You know, this started back when Nixon sent Henry over there to negotiate for the end of the Vietnam War and also the opening of China. The Chinese jumped on that bandwagon and been on it ever since.
And what really exacerbated it was when little Billy Clinton allowed Loral Aerospace to go to China and help them with their space issue, which also gave them all the tools they needed to build intercontinental ballistic missiles. And if China ever launches a missile at Taiwan, at Japan, at Hawaii, at Los Angeles, you have Bill Clinton to thank directly for that happening.
Well, the past 4 administrations have been deeply involved in letting this country sink while our intellectual property was stolen, while our markets were stolen, where our influence overseas was stolen out from underneath us with the Silk and the giant Silk Road initiative that China has going on. They've coined a term, it's called economic colonialism. And China's practicing it on a grand scale, all the way from Brazil to Sri Lanka, which they totally own now. They come in, they build infrastructure, ports, highways, rail lines, and then turn it over to the host nation to run, who have no capability of running that system. And then when it goes upside down, they come in and operate the whole thing and take it over. So they control your natural resources flowing out, your goods coming in, and a ready-made market for those Sanyo fans that you're going to need in the summertime to keep the skeeters off your butt.
And now let's move on and talk about something that exacerbated this entire problem, and that is Biden's deplorable retreat from Afghanistan.
Oh.
Now, I don't want to sit here and pump myself up. Well, maybe I do a little bit.
That was absolutely Raytheon whispering in the administration's ear.
Oh, yeah.
Let them take it all, we'll build new ones on a new contract, plus 30.
I went to Special Forces Operations and Intelligence School in 1980. And I guarantee you that any person in that class, these are all E6s and 7s from Special Forces taking this class, any one of them could have designed a much better operational plan for withdrawing from Afghanistan than the one that we actually used.
Except Dave McCall.
Well, except possibly Dave McCall. If you're out there, Dave, we love you. But seriously, I mean, everything that was done was wrong. Absolutely 180 degrees the opposite of what the correct thing to do would have been. And I'm not going to sit here and say we shouldn't get out of Afghanistan, because we should have. We were there too long to begin with. I'm a great proponent of, if some other country pisses us off, just go in there and drop an enormous amount of bombs on them and then go home. And that way, if they piss you off again in a couple of years, you can go do it again.
No finesse.
No finesse. If you hang around there for 20 years building Burger Kings and libraries, once you finally do leave, you're never going to be able to go back. It's that simple. I don't understand why these people that are educated at the War College, I guess they were spending too much time worrying about pronouns and who was going to shower in which locker room to think about the possibilities of a reasonable strategic withdrawal from Afghanistan.
Well, the opposite side of the coin is that we knew a guy that was working for the post office in Langley. And he was up in the hills with the Mujahideen. This is back in the 70s. And they pulled out and they sent a message to him, "You can come home now, Dave, everything's forgiven." And he stayed in the mountains. He became an absolute nuisance to him until they finally talked him out of there. And his next job was in Washington, D.C., escorting Arab officers to houses of ill repute.
Yes, it was a good job too. He knew every stripper in the greater DC area, which made him a nice guy to hang around with.
He did not drive an Aston Martin. He drove a Volkswagen
A
Beetle.
Volkswagen Beetle, and there's some really interesting stories about that Volkswagen in Vagabonds, Tourists in the Heart of Darkness.
And it's in our book.
All right, enough about Afghanistan. We were disgusted at that, but
Well, he was.
life goes on. Now the big Democrat issue of the day, abortion. I, for one, don't understand why it's such a big damn issue, because it really only affects about 15% of the population. I mean, think about it. It doesn't affect men very much,
So-
except as an easy way to get out of responsibility.
Did you say 15%?
15%.
Are we that low on women?
Well, it doesn't affect young girls. It doesn't affect old women after menopause. It only affects a small portion of women in their childbearing years. And even then, only the really slutty ones, let's face it.
Oh yeah, that's gonna fly on NBC.
Well, we're not on NBC, so.
Yeah, we will be.
But every time they argue again about, Roe v. Wade and the fact that the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, oh horror, oh horror. It's always, well, a 11-year-old might have been raped, or a woman with underlying medical conditions might have had an ectopic pregnancy. Yeah, that happens.
Well, let's get to the root of the problem. Abortion has become. That was the producer giving me directions. Look at the camera. Well, you have to remember that abortion spawned an entire industry
Oh, yeah.
of cell therapies and using fetal parts for medical research and that. I believe that you should have the right to get an abortion if you need an abortion. If you're a woman and you're in that situation, whether it was rape, incest, you just had an accident or whatever, but there's a certain amount of time that you should be allowed to make that decision. That's the problem that they're going to have to settle in the Supreme Court. What is the date? Is it 6 weeks? Is it 3 weeks? Is it, right now they can, abort it after birth, postnatal. And that's a horrible thing. But there's people making money on this by the millions. And they're all in the medical community. Imagine that.
Yeah. And I agree, there's a place for abortion in the medical community. But let's face it, 95% of the abortions that are happening are purely for convenience and nothing else. And abortions for convenience are the ones that should be gotten rid of. It's not a form of post-coital birth control. I mean, it's not a mechanism for avoiding responsibility because you failed to avoid responsibility when you were drunk at the fraternity party. To have abortion for real medical reasons, okay. To have abortion early, especially in the case of rape, let's face it, if you were raped, it does not take 8.5 months to figure that out. If you were raped, you should know you were raped within the first 2 months, and that's how you got pregnant, and have an abortion early. But if you finally make your decision at 8 months and 3 weeks, no, I just can't. Now it's just murder. Let's face it. You're using violence to still a human heart. If you use violence to still a human heart of any random person that you meet on the street, you're going up, unless you're in Los Angeles, New York City, or Philadelphia, you're going out for a long time. So why should it be that different? Let's get some reasonable, scientifically based, practical restrictions put on abortion, make it available for people that have a true medical necessity, and unavailable for people who just make a last-minute decision that they don't want to be bothered with a kid.
And those of you out there arguing that men can have an abortion as well, bollocks.
Yeah, we're getting there.
Pull
I
your
think-
waistband out, look in your britches.
I think that may be our very next thing. Good lead-in. Because
I do that again. What is
sex and gender.
Ah.
We're going to get into sex and gender.
I'm identifying as a mule today.
Yes, I'm identifying as a werewolf. And we both need our own private locker rooms because I sure as hell don't want to change in front of him.
You're a sick man. You know, but let's talk about gender, okay? Very simple. We're old school, you know, analog, people that could rebuild a carburetor. There was only two sexes when I was around, and there was a deficiency in one of them. If you use my dating record, you can prove that one. Facts. Okay, there's two sexes in the animal kingdom. There's morphodism. I can't just sing right here. The producer again. The facts are that in nature there's two sexes, male and female. There's morphodism among certain species that I think are in the clam family.
Earthworms.
Earthworm, the
Yes.
earthworm. There you go, that little
Yes,
bastard.
many millennials would prefer to identify with the earthworm to with the human, which is a really scary thing.
You just can't say, I have changed my pronoun to horse feathers, and expect everybody to go, yep, horse feathers. I understand that one. Yeah, sure. Hang around with my 4-year-old here. I want him to grow up strong and true. Not going to happen. So it's, you know, you have an argument. I can't remember who the British guy is that we watch. Very, very articulate, very gay. And Simon, no.
No, yeah, I know who you're talking
Anyway,
about.
he made a statement. You know, he came out very early in his career and that he identified what he was, how he felt that. But he's a moderate, he's a conservative. And he said, you know, when we got gay marriage, it should have stopped there. All this other trans arguments and all that they're only ruining the gay community and the vision of the world has on us. And he's absolutely correct. This has been shoved down our throat. We have a Secretary of Health and Human Services who actually makes Hillary Clinton and Whoopi Goldberg look good on camera. So, yeah, I mean,
The admiral?
and an admiral in the Navy, of course. It
Of
is
course
the
it's the
Navy.
Navy.
It's the Navy.
We're going to
you know.
get into the Navy more a little later. But,
Back away from the
remember
Euro.
this when we start
Yeah.
talking about the Navy.
But they, you know, they were, what is this? We have to be so touchy-feely that we're going to take a lie and make it our life and our, you know, our credo. You know, I know people in the service now talking about the witch hunts that are going on for anybody that has an opposing view to the trans BATF XYQ43, whatever it's called this week, agenda that's on everybody's book. And they have replaced the bureaucracy inside institutions like the military and the medical community, and then even in politics. And with people that go with this slant view, it does not reflect what the rest of us feel like.
No.
Not at all.
And I get really annoyed when people ask the question. I've heard this question asked 100 times if I've heard it once.
Who's your friend?
Why does your right to not use the trans person's preferred pronouns trump their right not to be abused?
Oh, you can't call them it.
Well, why?
Don't say it.
Yeah. Why does a trans person's right to be called the pronoun of their choice, even if it's a word they made up, trump my right to tell the truth? Because I think the truth is the most important factor in this entire equation.
Wait. The truth is transcendental.
And yeah, and we're being forced to lie when you see someone like this idiot behind us with his giant prosthetic breast running around trying to be a girl. I don't know if this guy's putting this on or if he's real. I don't think it matters in today's.
Is that what that is? I thought it was an 18-liter propane bottle. Oh, wow.
So the whole thing with pronouns is so ridiculous. It's absurd. Now, I don't have any preferred pronouns. I do have preferred adjectives. And my preferred adjectives are brutally handsome and godlike. I demand that those be used by anybody addressing me.
I will definitely answer to "Hey asshole." There you go.
Nick's
multi-sex.
Nick's pronouns are actually has and been.
Yes. Actually, they are. I hate to look down on the unemployed.
Oh, and here we go. This one's really news, right in the top of the news right now, because we're going to talk about climate change. And climate change is, as far as I'm concerned, the most ridiculous thing anybody ever came up with. Because it's all based on the idea that the history of the world only encompasses your lifetime. And if you get somebody like Greta Thunberg, who's what is she, 13 when she started
16.
wanking, now she's 16. Our lifetime doesn't encompass anything.
How dare you? How dare you?
Yeah.
All right.
I'll tell you right now how we dare.
Your parents weren't a couple of Swedish fanatics.
It's a crock. The world, depending on who you listen to, and this shows how precise science is, somewhere between 2 and 4 billion years old. Okay? Billion. That's billion with a B, which is a very small number compared to our national debt, but it's still a lot of years. The climate has changed thousands and thousands and thousands of times over that period of time. It's always changing. We've had ice ages, and we've had times when tropical fauna was growing at the North Pole. We've had times when it was slightly wetter than normal and times when it was slightly drier than normal. During the Pleistocene era, we had an extremely warm, dry period when there were giant sloths and saber-toothed tigers and mastodons wandering around Southern California.
And accountants.
And we know this because they're all in the La Brea tar pit, which is where the accountants should be.
Yeah, we can work that one.
And
then
we had an ice age, for God's sakes, when glaciers came down and carved out the Great Lakes. I mean, it's constantly changing. And the one thing no climate change advocate has ever been able to answer, the one question, what was the perfect day? When was the climate perfect? Why are we considering the idea now that any changes are necessarily going to be negative?
I can narrow it down a bit because archaeologists in Peru have found evidence of beer production going back to almost 13,000 years.
Wow.
So it's somewhere in that window.
13,000 years ago, it may have been much better climate than it is now, but do we really know? Because they hadn't really perfected the thermometer. You know, look at these people. We just had Hurricane Ian. These people are running around saying, "Oh, it's because of climate change. It's because of climate change." No, they haven't. Hurricanes haven't gotten worse, and they haven't gotten to be more frequent. Ian was the first hurricane this year to make landfall in the continental United States, and it's already going to be the 1st of October tomorrow.
Well, that hurricane that took the Great Spanish Fleet, which included the Antoca, was a Class 6, and it went all the way to Portugal.
This is a silver piece of 8 from the Antoca.
Look at the can.
And in 1563, they had 2 back-to-back hurricanes that were both enormous hit Florida, but of course there was nobody to measure what the wind speed was. But the biggest hurricane in the modern record, I think we started being able to somewhat gauge the power of hurricanes in the 1850s to 1860s, which isn't that long ago. Think about it.
Well, let's go back to why there's so much damage in that. There's so much damage because we permitted people to build on floodplains, on the shoreline,
on barrier islands,
on productive farmland rather than in the hills and mountains and that. And we're reaping that now. Of course, all of you out there do know that tornadoes feed on trailer parks.
Oh yeah. Apparently so do hurricanes, based on what I've seen so far in the aftermath of Hurricane Ian. There was a bunch of trailer parks down there, and your double wide doesn't stand a chance. And people should realize, if you've got 3/8 of an inch thick plywood walls on your home, you're probably not going to live through a Category 4 hurricane.
And strapping it down with twine from home to pot isn't going to save you. You need to either evacuate or fill out the insurance form before the hurricane hits and hope that the title search didn't go the wrong way.
Yeah. And until somebody can answer me when we had the perfect climate and why any change from that perfect baseline is negative, I'm not going to listen to any climate change people. I'm just not.
August 14th, 1968, I was laying on the beach, got a tan, drank a lot of beer, and I think I may have had sex that day. It was a perfect day. Perfect climate.
Okay, so whatever the climate was on that day, any change from that for Nick is going to be negative.
That's right. That's right. You should watch my other little scientific news frames.
All right.
So
those are the basic issues that we're dealing with. And as far as we're concerned, on every single one of those issues, right now the Republican Party has a much stronger position than the Democrat Party. I mean, some of you out there disagree with us. We understand that. But, you know, you're stupid, so fuck you.
I want you to know that I was kidnapped from the home this morning by these two gentlemen and made to do this tape.
There's a person behind the...
Look at the hand signals. Look at the hand signals.
There's a man behind the curtain right now with an assault rifle.
He's a Cuban. I know he's a Cuban. If he was a Venezuelan, he'd be overweight and couldn't hold a rifle.
From eating the zoo animals. All that elephant and rhinoceros will fuck you right up.
I got to tell you, I mean, even as an ending, that watching the films of people coming across, you judge people. I always remember somebody interviewed some woman in India that was like that big around. And she was going, why are all you poor people so fat? Well, I looked at the films of people coming across. There's a whole bunch of them haven't missed a meal in a while.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm absolutely positive that every Twinkie and every warehouse down south was emptied before they got up here. But then that's just our opinion. And you know what they say about opinions?
Yes. And that includes your opinions too out there.
That's right. Call us if you disagree with us.
YouTube land.
We may answer you, we may not.
Yeah. But I've got this weird sort of masochistic streak that I usually answer people that are really 180 degrees off from me.
And the good thing is our producers left the room, so we can say anything we want.
Yeah.
Anything.
I get frustrated because I can't punch them in the face over YouTube.
What, we were talking about breakfast?
All right. So those are the issues. We hope you'll go the right way.
And we actually have some guests that have some real pedigree.
Oh yeah.
We have a gentleman in London whom I've known for 40 years and that, who, when you see his curriculum vitae, our credibility disappears in that same instant.
Curriculum vitae? Are you trying to convince people here that you got past the 6th grade?
What's that? Nos foram carborundum? No.
No.
Wait.
Illegitimatum non carborundum.
Mutant. Kind of. My Latin comes back to me when I remember the pain in my anus from Brother Gerald. Don't be alone with cousin Jerome or brother Jerome.
All right. At this point in the podcast, we have officially cut off Nick's whiskey consumption.
I haven't even drank about half of that. I'm not loaded, officer.
And
There's
now
so
we're-
much in the back seat that's got panties on and part of an alligator costume. That motherfucker is loaded.
Now we're going to talk about some of the candidates that you're going to have the chance
we
to
were
vote
done.
for. Move on. And first, Arizona Governor, we like Kerry. We have been to several of Kerry's events. We have met Kerry, and we think that she's got her you-know-what together. I think she really will be the DeSantis of the West when she gets into that office. And there's nothing this state could use more. This other chick, Hobbs, she's nothing. She's a non-entity. The only reason anybody knows her name is because that she got prosecuted twice for racism and lost both times and cost the state of Arizona millions of dollars.
Who is she racist against? Samoan?
No, her own staff, she was paying minorities on her own staff less than she was paying the white people. And she got caught at it,
That
and
was the purgatory.
the state paid out millions of dollars on her behalf. Of course, it didn't cost her anything because she's a politician, but it cost the state, cost you Arizona voters to pay for this ridiculous left-wing useless pustule of a woman to pay her
I haven't heard that
minority
since the Middle
employees less than she paid her white employees. I mean, come on. Why would anybody vote for this? Kerry is the way to go. We are so 100% behind her, and I'm pretty confident at this point that she's going to win, and I really hope I'm right.
Well, when we say we, we're talking about we in the imperial sense over here.
That's right, kind of like
Because-
Queen Victoria.
Because, yeah, very much like the Queen. Yeah. I personally, politics gives me gas. But I like Kerry. I mean, I met her a couple times, at one of these political rallies and that, and watched her on stage in her presentation and that, and her past history. I love the fact that she came from journalism, real old-fashioned journalism. When she was on the news, and then when she later went into politics, she also demonstrates an ability to change her mind and defend it. Well, I believe that in 2021, since then, events and etc. and facts have shown me that I want to change my mind to this. She reminds me a lot of Governor Jan, who I absolutely loved for the termite scene with Obama. So, to me, she's the conservative voice we need in there to replace Ducey, who's really intent on becoming the senator from Arizona rather than the next governor, to replace Mark Kelly.
Yeah.
But the guy that has the ability to beat Mark is Blake Masters. He's got it hands down. He needs some, and into the camera in the front, into the camera in the front. He needs to polish himself as far as Washington, how he presents himself to Washington, because Washington will eat his butt if he's not careful. And it needs a savvy political organization behind you to do that. I met Blake a couple of times. I like his father, Scott. We get along really well, very pragmatic in that. He has the right ideas, it's how he couches them. It's almost like, what was her name for governor of Alaska?
Sarah.
Yeah, Sarah. Sarah was great. What she needed was a voice coach. Somebody to lower her speeches down about 6 decibels so she didn't sound like a valley girl when she was talking. All those little nuances play into being the right candidate at the right time. I want to say this now for everybody out there, do not want to be elected. I do not want to be nominated, and I will not serve. I only have a few years left in this poor life of mine, and I'd like to spend it in some kind of prurient pleasure.
That whole thing about not getting elected is probably a sure thing. I'm willing to put money on that right now.
You know what? And Don?
But I like Blake. He's very smart. Really, he's got
some good ideas.
He's got just a razor sharp intelligence.
Let's make a little point of that. His idea to privatize Social Security is a great idea. Let me turn it over to the expert on this with the numbers and that.
Yeah.
Chile did exactly the same thing.
Yeah. Well, that's one thing. The two things that the bald former Navy bridge troll is trying to hang around Blake's neck is that he was A, never in the service, and B, wants to get rid of Social Security. Okay?
Kelly got his commission from the Coast Guard.
Yeah. So these are two things that I can talk about with great understanding because I'm old and I had a pretty reasonable service record. And between the two of us, we got 1,000 times the
8
service
Article
record.
15s and 4 Article 32 investigations.
And many decorations during his multi-years in Mac V SOG in Vietnam. He won't say it, but I will.
I won't say it because I'm embarrassed of the fact that I lied to you. I was actually a cook in the Navy.
As a veteran senior citizen,
we're out of tape.
I thought I was being cut off.
Well, he said he was cook in the Navy. I'm done. Cut it off.
As a veteran senior citizen, I can tell you.
See, the feeling is universal about the Navy.
Yeah. You know, I did 14 years in U.S. Army Special Forces, and I'm 76 years old, and I've been getting Social Security now for 11 years. And it's nice. It doesn't support me. It's a nice little extra stipend every month that I use in addition to what I have to go out and earn at my age.
And I'm 75 years old, and I have women that still won't hang out with me.
Had Social Security been privatized back in the 1970s, I'd probably be filthy freaking rich right now.
If you put your money into a financial instrument rather than the government managing it, who later came back and went, oh, look at all this cash here. Oh my God, we can get hookers. And took it all, like Congress did. The average person making $30,000 a year would have ended up at retirement age with like $700,000 in an investment fund, paying income to it. But because you got all these pick and choose things, and nobody who came to this country and did not contribute to Social Security deserves 1 penny from it. Then that's our problem. We've given it away. We've given away our heritage, our safety net. And I think I gave away that redhead that I met at the truck stop in Montana.
So anyway, I just want to make one statement here. As a 76-year-old veteran, I'm voting for Blake. And I'm voting for Blake because I have absolutely no worries that he's going to do anything negative to my Social Security payment. And I'm voting for Blake because he's a whole hell of a lot smarter than Kelly is. And I don't care if Kelly was a freaking... I used to hang out with all the early astronauts. Gus Grissom, Wally Schirra used to let me drive his Mustang GT350 to pick up chicks back in the day. I know astronauts. I knew real astronauts. I don't give a damn about Mark Kelly.
Light her up. I'm ready to go. That crowd.
Yeah. Well, Gus was killed in a raging fire in a test capsule.
What was the one with the movie with Clint Eastwood and Tommy Lee Jones?
Yeah.
God, I love that movie. That was the old time master.
I used to hang around with those people back in the day, and I don't have any reverence for Mark Kelly and his quasi astronaut status.
He was
And
a
I'm
Serbian
gonna
naval
vote for
officer
Blake.
when he went on an exchange program to China as an astronaut in their space program. And during that time, and suddenly when he came back, he had enough money to start his own strip joint and get involved in the solar energy industry with, where do you make solar panels? It's not Cincinnati.
No.
And there's a lot of stringers going back to how he got and where he is and where this state is going. And the people that we're talking about have noted the change. They want to change the way things are run in Arizona. I do too. And if any of you are out there, I'd like to get a traffic ticket fixed from, last Thursday. So listen up. Vote Republican.
So now we come to Attorney General, where we're both back in AFGHANISTAN. We like Abe. He's a straight arrow young kid.
He's an intel officer.
He's almost too straight arrow to be true.
Yeah,
But he has read our book, which obviously puts it way out in front of anybody else. And this chick that he's running against is some kind of total wacko leftard. She is way out there in the fringes of,
Well, he was.
I'm surprised she
He
hasn't
was an
dyed her
intel
hair
officer
blue.
that was also in JAG. He was a JAG officer and also went
but he was
to.
Intel.
Yeah.
Primarily, he was an Intel officer, and I like him. He's a good guy. I don't really know all that much about him except for his Intel officer career over in the Middle East, but I do know that the chick he's running against is crazy as a shithouse rat. She's out there with Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez.
Sandy from the Catskills.
Sandy from the Catskills. She's out there on that left fringe of the Democrat Party, and we cannot let her get into the AG's office. I mean,
No.
come on, give me a break. So that's all we really have to say about that. Now we're going to go out of state here to Georgia, where Herschel star football player Walker is running against Warlock, who is obviously part of the Legion of Hell and a servant of Satan.
A servant of Satan?
I might be overdoing this a little.
You got to do that little dance that the Presbyterians do when you say, a servant of Satan!
But let's face it, he's backed by that enormous, disgusting, hippopotamus-like black woman that runs around. I think she's running for governor.
Tracy.
Yeah, Tracy. My God.
Makes you want to hate the postal.
So we're definitely behind Herschel in this race, and I think he's pulling ahead right now, which is good for you, Georgia. Anybody out there looking at this from Georgia? Get out there and get Herschel into the Senate.
Well,
We need him.
the left press doesn't want to look at anybody that is articulate and rational, that proposes something other than the propaganda they're trying to put across as a black person. That's they disavow anybody like Candace Owens, anybody that's got any sort of common sense that tries to make their arguments based on facts. They're not into if it's not emotional, we ain't doing it. Oh, this is a good one.
And now, last but certainly not least, Pennsylvania. I have a bit of a personal interest in this because I spent a lot of my childhood in Pennsylvania, and my sister lives in Pennsylvania. I have two nieces and a
There were
nephew in
animals
Pennsylvania.
involved in this. I want you to know that.
And I was never that thrilled about Dr. Oz, to be honest with you. But now that it's come down to only two candidates, he is so far superior to the candidate he's running against. It's ridiculous. Fetterman.
Dr. Oz is like, from our point of view, or from my point of view anyway, looking at him, it's like watching Dr. Phil when he doesn't drink his own urine. And the other guy in this race,
Woo.
there's some bats loose in the belfry that are probably armed. This man is way off the left end of the bridge in that. You were saying about his background?
Well, he was psychologically brain damaged by going to Harvard. And then he was physically brain damaged by having a stroke. So we're talking about brain damage squared. He calls himself he actually calls himself a Bernie Sanders clone, which I can't think of anything quite as ridiculous as being, because Bernie Sanders himself is as crazy as you can possibly get.
That's like having a penis with chancres.
Yeah, and this guy, wants to imitate Bernie. He's this huge hulking oaf. He looks like the guy in the movie The Goonies that they had chained in the basement. And his ideas are worse than his physical presentation. I mean, give me a break, Pennsylvania. I mean, I haven't lived there since 1959, but I'm still crying for you if you elect this complete gargoyle as your senator. Come on.
If you go on just type in Fetterman, and you may or may not get this goofball, but you may get the Fetterman Massacre, which happened when a colonel of the Colorado militia in 1879 declared to his commander that he could whip the Sioux with 70 men, 70 cavalrymen. Well, he went outside the fort with 54 cavalrymen, the rest of them were infantry, and it was called the Fetterman Massacre.
Yeah.
So the boy's working on the same plane. He's not looking at reality.
We need another Fetterman Massacre in Pennsylvania.
Well, geez, you had to say that. We're gonna be on fucking YouTube jail.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
But like we said, this is just our opinions. And we're just a couple of old, retired Green Berets, former Intel weirdos. You can read all about us in Vagabonds, Tourists in the Heart of Darkness. But now you know what we think about the midterm elections. So get out there. And we don't want to tell you how to vote. We're just telling you how you would already be voting if you had a lick of sense.
All right, and the bottom line here, I like what he said, but send us money. Subscribe, donate, do whatever you want. Send us your sister so we can talk to her.
And go online to toxicmasculinitywhiskey.com and buy yourself a bottle.
Yeah.
I guarantee your whole world vision will change after just one bottle of this stuff.
And God bless Jesus and our producer. And Don, if you're out there, I'm gunning for you, buddy.
Run, run, run for the dragon from treason. Far enough till I reach your warm season. Run, run.